wrestling world in shock today. Former champion Chris Benoit found dead with his wife and young son. Discovery as a double murder-suicide.
Our wrestler, his wife, and young son were found dead in, call it a murder-suicide. Tales of their deaths as bizarre.
The Attitude Era was one of the most wildest periods in television history. Vince was so down bad and he needed his greatest idea to work, and it worked perfectly. Vince's idea was basically to do the craziest shit on live TV. Every week they would push the boundaries, and it got to the point where the WWF was the biggest company in the world and everybody was a fan. You had crazy moments like Mankind putting his life on the line in Hell in a Cell. You had DX making girls flash themselves on live TV. The Rock being funny as hell on the mic and making everyone laugh. And how can I forget the Vince and Stone Cold rivalry? No words can explain how amazing this was. Stone Cold would deadass come out, drink a couple beers, make people laugh, and then he would just beat the hell out of his boss. I'm convinced people wanted to do this to their bosses. I swear to God. So, in June 2002, the Ruthless Aggression era started. You had huge stars like John Cena, Randy Orton, Batista, Edge, Triple H, Shawn, and Brock Lesnar. The time was changing, and the WWE was adapting to its surroundings. It wasn't as crazy as the Attitude Era. They toned it down a little bit, but nonetheless, it was still crazy. They were still sexualizing women by having bra and panty matches and the segments they were putting on TV. The in-ring wrestling was 10 times better than what it was in the Attitude Era. So now, we're in 2004, the Royal Rumble in fact. A man named Chris Benoit would go on to win the Royal Rumble, and he would go on the main event, WrestleMania. Chris would go on to win the World Heavyweight title, and if it couldn't get any better, he did it with his best friend, Eddie Guerrero, by his side. Eddie was Chris's best friend. They literally came up together and debuted together, and this just wasn't a wrestling buddy. In real life, they were considered brothers. But, however, in late 2005, Eddie Guerrero would pass away due to heart failure. The whole world was saddened by this news, but the person that was affected the most by this was Chris. They would have a Raw tribute show, and if you go look at Chris's interview talking about it, it's honestly sad, but this started his downward spiral. Chris was severely depressed, taking pills, and taking steroids. This dude every week was doing a flying headbutt off turnbuckles and ladders, and he got hit with the craziest chair shots I've ever seen in my whole life. I remember one Raw Triple H clothesline Chris. He fell out of the ring, and it literally looked like his eyes were gonna pop out. It was so scary. And to be completely honest, Chris's marriage with Nancy was failing at the time. But on June 24th, 2007, Chris finally snapped. Chris would go on to take the life of his wife Nancy and his 7-year-old son Daniel, and eventually, Chris would go on to take his own life. So, how did this tragedy change wrestling forever? Well, this completely rocked the current foundation of the WWE, and honestly, nobody knew what to think. As a result, the company had to make a change and go PG and more kid-friendly. No more chair shots, no more blood, no more testing the limits. It was all done. So, let's take a look back on how this completely changed not only wrestling, but the whole world. And rest in peace, Nancy and Daniel. So now, we're in 2003, still in the Ruthless Aggression era, and at this point, they toned back on some of the crazy stuff, but they were still testing the limits. The whole WWE was changing. Top stars like Brock, The Rock, Stone Cold, and Goldberg left the company. So, Vince had to get new stars. They brought in John Cena, Randy, Edge, and they brought back Kurt and Shawn as replacements. Vince was really good at bringing in new guys, but one thing that never changed was the rules. There was still large amounts of blood, still bad chair shots, and foul language. One problem the company couldn't stop was the use of steroids. Many stars like Triple H, Batista, Hulk Hogan, Maven, Kane have all admitted to being on steroids. And, unfortunately, this was a problem that the company couldn't stop. This would lead to further problems in the future. A guy who knew was Eddie Guerrero. In November 2001, Eddie was fired due to substance abuse. Eddie was also on steroids, and this went hand in hand. 5 months later, he was brought back and arguably had his greatest run ever. Eddie was back. He challenged Brock Lesnar at No Way Out for the undisputed title. Eddie was a true underdog, and he went on to go beat Brock Lesnar for the title. What a great story. He deserved it. But at the same time, his best friend Chris Benoit was chasing his own story and was main eventing WrestleMania. The thing that was similar, Chris was also a big underdog. Chris would go on to win the title, and him and Eddie had an emotional moment and hugged. They've been through the lowest of lows together, but on this night, they were undeniable. They were both on the top of the world in the main event of WrestleMania. But, unfortunately, Eddie Guerrero passed away. This took a huge toll on Chris Benoit's mental health. Vince had a tribute show, and if you look at Chris's interview, it looked like his world was ending. Unfortunately, Vince and the WWE wouldn't change a thing. Superstars would still take steroids, and they were still taking pills, and this would eventually lead to a bigger controversy. So now, we're in 2006, and at the time, Chris Benoit was absolutely the greatest pure wrestler, and this dude had an amazing theme song. This shit hits. It doesn't matter on how good of a wrestler you are, he was still fighting his demons. Chris was writing in his journal to Eddie saying that he missed him. Chris's mental health was getting worse and declining rapidly, and if it couldn't get any worse, he got drafted to ECW. This would pretty much end his wrestling career. Chris would be scheduled to face CM Punk at Vengeance, but Benoit no-showed the event. Then, Chris took the life of Nancy and Daniel, and later that night, Chris called Chavo and said, "I love you."
I love you.
And Chavo felt something was off.
I love you too, man.
After, Chris called Talent Relations and said that he couldn't make the house show. WWE agreed, but told him to be in San Antonio for the pay-per-view. This is believed that this was the last convo with Chris Benoit. Later that night, Benoit texted Chavo and Scott Armstrong his address. WWE went on with the pay-per-view and excused his absence. But Chris also took his own life, and the WWE called the police to check on the house. The police found the bodies. The week prior, Vince would blow up his limo in a storyline, but Vince was on TV and announced what happened to the world. The company had no idea what happened, but they had a tribute show for him. Multiple superstars talked about Benoit, but the weird thing was, during William Regal's interview, it felt like he knew something, and he couldn't say it on TV. As the show was going on, the company was learning what actually happened, and that Chris did this. The cops learned that Chris was on drugs and had severe brain damage. It was confirmed that he had CTE. Well, what's CTE? CTE is a brain disease that damages the brain over time. Signs of it are memory loss, confusion, personality changes, depression, and much more. What causes CTE is repeated head trauma, such as concussions and other head impacts. As we said prior, Chris had multiple concussions by his flying headbutt, chair shots to the head, and just by the way he was wrestling. Now, some WWE superstars who don't believe in CTs are Stone Cold and Vince McMahon, and honestly, I lost a little bit of respect. Especially Vince. In the documentary, he kept saying Chris just went crazy, and that's further from the truth. And now, that's no excuse for what he did, but I think Paul Heyman said it perfectly in his interview.
3 people died. Only one person had the choice behind it. I don't care what the reasons are. Daniel had no option. He did.
Nobody just turns that crazy out of nowhere. For example, look at Antonio Brown. Dude was the best receiver in football for almost 3 to 4 years. No problems whatsoever. But Vontaze Burfict hit him in the head. After this, AB went crazy, being a diva receiver, RAPE allegations, assaulting a truck driver, and so much more. This dude literally ran off the football field in the middle of a game. Look at his Twitter. This dude be saying the craziest stuff I've ever seen. And just listen to the way he talks. And he openly says that he has CTE. Another example, look at Aaron Hernandez. Dude was a little crazy of Florida, I'll give you that. But when he got drafted and got hit hard in the league, look at interviews and everything, he completely lost it. It got to the point where he took the lives of 2 people and went to jail. But when he passed away, the doctors looked at his brain and found out he had stage 3 CTE. And finally, look at Chris. Chris with the flying headbutt and other crazy moves he was doing. His brain was getting worse and worse, and when Eddie passed away, this just put the nail in the coffin. He wasn't himself, and the steroids and pills weren't helping either. After the tragedy, his brain wasn't tested, but they figured out at the time of the tragedy, he had stage 3 CTE also. And again, this isn't me defending Chris. What he did was disturbing and disgusting, but with all the facts, this definitely played a role. In 2015, they released a movie called Concussion, and they went into everything about all this. So if you're interested, give it a watch. We have to understand that CTs and concussions are real and that they have severe consequences. Why do you think in football you can't touch the quarterback or hit anyone nowadays? It's because of this. Over the next year, Vince finally had enough. He completely changed everything. On July 22nd, 2008, the company turned PG. No more blood, no more hard chair shots, no more sexualizing women, and no more cussing or any mature content. And it didn't stop there. Vince implemented the wellness policy, which prohibits wrestlers from drugs and steroids and made everything more stricter. Vince was getting a lot of hate after the tragedy, so he had to do this. The company made testing for those substances way stricter. And they focused on brain health. They banned moves and actions to the head. So Vince needed a guy, a huge star to help him, a guy who could appeal to the kid demographic, and his name was John Cena. You ask every kid from 2009 to 2016 who their favorite wrestler was, and it was John Cena. Cena was the perfect guy to get them out of this tragic era. I mean, just look at him. John Cena was the top guy in advertisements, merch sales, and this dude was doing make-a-wishes. He was the perfect guy to lead WWE out of this tragic era. I just remember Cena was in a feud with someone, and I was like 9. My mom heard someone say a cuss word, and I swear she didn't let me watch wrestling for like 3 months. However, the older demographic wasn't happy about this change. They wanted to see DX do crazy shit. They wanted to see girls have bra and panty matches. They wanted to see blood, chair shots, and most importantly, they wanted to see Stone Cold beat the hell out of Vince McMahon. They didn't want to see WWE superstars do tea parties. They didn't want to see Zack Ryder getting pushed off the stage by Kane. They didn't want to see all this kid-friendly shit. But after a tragedy like this, you gotta rebuild and change everything. Another reason they changed was money. You know how much more money you can make with sponsors and everything? I remember in like 2011, 2012, they would have the Sonic ads nonstop and all the other advertisements. After this, the revenue tripled, but the ratings were genuinely declining. One promo had everyone questioning everything.
And I'd like to think maybe this company will be better after Vince McMahon's dead.
To this day, the pipe bomb promo is one of the greatest things to touch wrestling ever. Nobody will for sure know if it was a planned thing or Punk just went out there and spoke his mind honestly. People were genuinely curious. Was WWE still PG? Yes, it was. But they would do this every now and then. Now in 2014, welcome to the reality era. The program was still PG, however, they would sprinkle in some crazy stuff. You had Punk's promos, you had Brock Lesnar breaking people's arms left and right, and you had some blood in some matches. Other than John Cena though, you had another big babyface on the run of his life, and his name was Daniel Bryan. Bryan went on to win the world title at WrestleMania and had one of the best chases of all time. So now, let's jump to SummerSlam 2022. After Vince McMahon left the company, Triple H took over and changed a lot. He made the WWE PG-13, and I genuinely believe this is the best we got. The current WWE has crazy moments and completely changed from 2011 to 2021. The booking is 10 times better, and it just feels right to me. The one promo that still has me shocked was when Gunther was beating the hell out of Jimmy, and he was bleeding heavy. You haven't seen anything like that since pre-PG. You could say Brock and Cena, but I don't know. I'm pretty sure it's because of Netflix, but I'm not so sure. But I feel like this could happen more in the future. And I just gotta say, I feel bad for David Benoit. This dude got blackballed and everything, and honestly, it's sad to see. The last thing I've seen, I'm pretty sure he's a wrestler, but if I'm wrong, someone let me know in the comments. But I saw at like a Raw or something, Punk was hugging him or something. It's just crazy. The one time he wasn't there, all this happened, so I honestly feel bad for him. So, let's answer one last question. How did the Chris Benoit tragedy completely change wrestling forever? Well, the Chris Benoit tragedy changed the world for multiple reasons. The company completely changed. It's no coincidence that the WWE turned into a family phenomenon. They took zero chances with brain health. At Mania 27, Triple H and The Undertaker said that they got fined for a chair shot. That just proves that they weren't taking any chances. It's just in a combination of everything I said in this video. Nothing changes without the tragedy. Like I said earlier in the video, we have to understand that CTEs and concussions are real and they have severe consequences. I will say the WWE made the right choice by not putting him in the Hall of Fame. As a talent, one of the greatest I've ever seen, but you can't overlook what he did. But yeah, y'all, that's the video. I hope y'all enjoyed. I know this was a serious video, but I felt like this is one I had to make. We started posting again on the TikTok, so if you want to go follow our TikTok, it's on the screen right now. And we also made an Instagram, and that's where you're going to see sneak peek to some videos and just polls and what you guys want to see on this channel. And alright, y'all, tell me what y'all think in the comment section below. And Birds of Productions, out of here. And just one more time, rest in peace to Nancy and Daniel.